Welcome to Real versus Real, the podcast that explores the accuracy of popular movies in portraying real events and figures. From ancient civilizations to modern times, Hollywood has produced countless films based on true stories. But how much of what we see on screen is actually true? Join us as we scrutinize the accuracy of their portrayals, discuss the impact they have on our understanding of the past, and review the historical context of popular movies. Now, whether you're a history buff or a movie fan, this podcast is for you. So grab some popcorn, sit back, and join us as we compare real versus real. Welcome back, guys. This is Real versus Real, and I'm your host, Skyler. Now, get ready for another episode with our favorite archaeologist, Indiana Jones. Now, this time we're going to go over the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It's set in the 1950s during the wild times of the Cold War. Our fearless archaeologist, Indiana Jones, finds himself in a hair-raising quest filled with ancient mysteries and government shenanigans. It all kicks off when Indy is approached by a cool guy named Mutt Williams. That's played by Shia LaBeouf, however you want to pronounce it. Who needs his help tracking down this legendary crystal skull. Together they embark on a wild ride that takes them from the lush jungles of Peru to the heart-pounding escapades in the Soviet Union. Throughout their journey, they face gnarly obstacles. There's even a scene where Shia LaBeouf is swinging through the trees with monkeys. It's pretty cool. We get double-crossing agents and mind-blowing prophecies. It turns out this crystal skull has some serious powers. It even gets into Indy's head and starts telling him to return the skull to where it came from. Indy teams up with some familiar faces, including his ex-girlfriend from the first movie, Marion Ravenwood, and his quirky buddy, Professor Oxley. They've got to outsmart the sneaky Soviet agents led by a very intense Irina Spalko. I'm going to say that's how you pronounce the name. And that's played by Cate Blanchett. They uncover the truth about this mind-boggling crystal skull and its weird ties to the legendary city of gold, El Dorado. Indiana Jones in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is a cool mix of thrilling adventure, mind-bending archaeology, and pretty crazy science fiction. So get ready to rock and roll as Indy takes on the bad guys, dodges wild traps, and unravels secrets that'll blow your mind. So get comfy and let's get started. So we're going to talk about the Crystal Skulls. Now, the Crystal Skulls believed to have supernatural powers. Hundreds of them exist, but only 13 are said to have superpowers, and only 12 of those 13 are said to have been found. Scientists say that the skulls are fake and that they were created recently, but there's no way to know how old they actually are because the skulls are pure quartz, which is just silicone, and since there's no carbon of any kind or any kind of radioactive components, scientists can't really give them a creation date. Some believe that these skulls were brought here from other planets and that they hold knowledge from each planet. And when they're all brought together, the being that does bring them all together would be gifted the universal knowledge from each of the 12 planets in our solar system, which is the theory that was used for the movie. Now, with people having so much faith in the powers of these skulls, naturally bad guys started wanting them. The Dalai Lama and other high lamas fled Tibet through the Himalayas into Nepal to escape China and carried with them this 22-pound crystal skull. It was really big. And the crystal skull was even found in the possession of Heinrich Himmler. Yeah, the right-hand man for Adolf Hitler. Again, we have Nazis. They're not in the movie, but the real-life crystal skulls, one was found in their possession. These guys are always trying to find artifacts like we've covered in the other episodes, but in this case, they actually had a crystal skull and believed this skull gave them an upper hand in taking over Europe. Crystal skulls have been linked to the city of Atlantis and were believed to be used to harness the power of the universe and also store knowledge, kind of like a crystal computer chip. There's even been tests done using aura technology to see if there's any kind of energy surrounding the skulls. They took a picture of one skull that is still called the Einstein skull, that supposedly communicated to its owner that it was the head skull and was once in the city of Atlantis. The photo showed deep blue auras surrounding the skull, which shouldn't happen since it's basically just a pretty rock. But it has a blue aura, which is supposed to represent wisdom and knowledge. It's a camera, like they set it down, and then there's a bunch of sensors that sit underneath it that are supposed to pick up on this, and they take a picture of it, and whatever color is there, there's a color that's affiliated with whatever the aura is supposed to represent. And in this case, it was wisdom and knowledge. Most theories place these skulls as being ancient Mesoamerican and Aztec artifacts, but the British Museum has analyzed several of these skulls, and they believe they could not have been made before the mid to late 1800s. Since there's no document saying any of these skulls were found in Central and South America, they believe that all the legends are just that, legends. Which is a big letdown if you aren't a faith-based person and are looking to science to tell you that these skulls have superpowers. The fun behind a lot of these historical artifacts and their supernatural properties is the belief that they're real. Not unlike a child believing in Santa Claus, whether it's real or not doesn't really matter, but if you believe these skulls contain the knowledge of the universe, if believing that makes you happy, then don't worry about what the British Museum has to say, because what truly brings peace and joy in life, at least in my life, is faith in things that science can't explain. So whether you are a science-based person or you're more of a faith-based person, the skulls are still just really cool. Like, they're solid pieces of quartz. Whether they are the skulls of aliens like in the movie, or somebody figured out a way to make them like way back in the day, or they were created only a couple hundred years ago. Either way, they're still cool. There's a lot of them. Like, you can even go online and buy a crystal skull. It won't be one of these, but like, you can buy them, and they're just really cool to look at. And if you're a faith-based person, believe that they have magical powers. Who cares? And now, so these skulls in the movie were the skulls of, they weren't necessarily aliens. They were, at the end of the movie, they said that they were interdimensional beings. So they're not like going from like outer space. They're like traveling between like dimensional planes and whatnot. And the place and they're supposed to return this skull to its home. And the home that they're looking for is El Dorado. Now, we all know what El Dorado is. It's the city of gold, containing riches the world has never seen before, and was said to be very advanced as far as our standards of what humans were able to accomplish at that time. But where is it? Does it even exist? Well, in the movie, Indy and his gang end up in El Dorado, and once inside a great temple, they do find an obnoxious amount of gold and artifacts from all over the world, from different parts of history. And the chamber that housed the crystal skeletons of the interdimensional beings was plated in pure gold. But in the movie, El Dorado turned out to be a spaceship used to travel between worlds. But what about the real El Dorado? So a Spanish conquistador, Juan de Castellanos, sorry, my Spanish is terrible. He was a conquistador turned priest. They discovered the Muisca tribe high in the eastern range of the Andes Mountains and what is now Colombia. Now, the chief of this tribe would cover himself head to toe in gold dust, which is where the term El Dorado actually originates from. It means the golden one or the gilded one. He then took a barge into the middle of Lake Guatavita. Guatavita? Sure, we'll go with that. The people of the tribe then began to sing as he made offerings of gold and emeralds to the lake. He then dove in as a signal for the festival to begin. As this story got back to Spain, conquistadors heard of this man covered in gold and decided that they wanted to see for themselves and also get their hands on whatever treasure they could, that they could find. They ended up finding a lot of gold jewelry and different golden pieces, which later turned out to be just gold plated. So they would take like gold pieces and they would mix it with other materials and they would melt it all down, and the gold would rise to the surface, and there was just like this paper thin layer of gold around all of this stuff. But they didn't know that and decided to take as much of it as they could and were set on finding El Dorado, or the City of Gold. No such city was ever found, but the lake where these offerings were made, they had partially drained it. They had figured out how to get a bunch of the water out of the lake, and treasures have been found there, but nothing substantial enough to take the name El Dorado. But with the actual translation of El Dorado meaning the Gilded One, I guess they actually found it. But the hunt continues. Now, Francisco de Orellana, also known as the Gilded Man, was also a Spanish conquistador who, in the 16th century, organized an expedition of the lost city of Akator, where he found a crystal skull, one of 13. So, of these skulls, and these were the skulls of the interdimensional beings. The skull insisted to Orellana to return it to its home, but before he could, Orellana was killed by the Nazca tribe, leaving the skull to be buried with him. And now this is Francisco de Orellana from the movie. But he was a real man, and he lived from 1490 to 1546. He was the first European explorer of the Amazon River. He worked with Francisco Pizarro to conquer Peru in 1535, and then moved on Guayaquil. Man, I'm butchering these names. Guayaquil, something like that, and was named governor of that area in 1538. He was then appointed lieutenant of an expedition to explore regions east of Quito in 1541. He was sent ahead of the main party to find provisions, and he took 50 soldiers with him. He reached the junction of the Napo and Maranon rivers, where he was persuaded by his troops that it was impossible to return to the party. So instead of going back, he started exploring the Amazon system. After about half a year, he reached the mouth of the river, and so it would have been August of 1542. After reaching Trinidad, he returned to Spain with stories of hoards of gold and cinnamon, and encountered tribes of women resembling the Amazons of Greek mythology, which is where he got the name for the Amazon River. So that's something that you know now. The Amazon River comes from Greek mythology, which is kind of cool. He later returned to the Amazon to continue his exploration, but met his untimely demise as he and many others had either drowned or died in shipwrecks. I had since read a little bit more about this, and they didn't necessarily persuade him. They threatened a mutiny on him to not go back. Like, they were like, we can do that, but we're going to kill you. Which, I mean, is still a form of persuasion, but a mutiny is a little more extreme than just saying, like, come on, man, like, let's not do that. So, yeah, he was a real guy, and he died. Never found a crystal skull. Doesn't even have any real correlation with any of the crystal skulls, but he was connected to El Dorado, so I'm guessing that's why they put him in the movie. Yeah. So, now, on to the Russians. We all know Russians are just as tough as they are crazy. In the movie, our Russian antagonist, played by Cate Blanchett, was on the hunt for the skull in order to gain unlimited knowledge to strengthen her psychic abilities. And yeah, the Russians truly believed that they were able to use telekinesis for many things, whether it be mind control or to communicate from ship to shore without using radio waves. They also believed they could use telepathy to disrupt guidance systems in intercontinental ballistic missiles. Now, no proof of this actually working is documented or confirmed, but Russians definitely were trying to gain that ability and put it to use. Her character didn't exist in real life. I couldn't find anything about that. But yeah, it's kind of like how they just threw the Nazis in the other movies. Like, they kind of needed a bad guy. And this did take place during the Cold War, so it's a little so it is relevant that the Russians would be a part of it. But as far as like the actual story of like Crystal Skulls or like the city of El Dorado, there's not a whole lot of connection between Russia and that. So yeah, in the movie, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's pretty good. I used to not like it, and then I rewatched it recently so I could get a little information for this episode, so I could have a better commentary, because it's been years since I had seen it. But the movie's great. Aside from the fact that it's aliens, I don't really care for aliens that much, but it's cool. They bring in Mutt, which is Shia LaBeouf, which turns out to be Indiana Jones' son. There's even a spot. There's a spot in the movie where like these giant fire ants are like taking people and like sucking them down into the earth and like killing them and everything. Like I said, with Shia LaBeouf swinging through the trees. There's a lot of sword fighting, a lot of fist fight. Like, it's still an Indiana Jones movie, and it's a great watch. They do end up returning the skull to its home place, and then once it does, like, Cate Blanchett's character, it's just like, I want to know everything. And the alien was just like, all right, so starts just pumping her full of knowledge. And, like, she eventually, like, almost kind of like disintegrates, because once the skull got returned, the spaceship started back up and like everything started rotating and all the gold started falling off the walls, and this portal opens up above and they're getting ready to get sucked up into it so they could travel on to whatever their next destination was going to be. She gets sucked up into it, everybody else ends up escaping, and they're in the middle of Peru just with no more El Dorado. But yeah, that's how the movie ends. Like, it's a cool movie. Give it a watch. I hope that I can get the Dial of Destiny done before we start putting these out. If not, no worries. We'll come back to it. And there you have it. That's Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Crystal Skull. It started out as my least favorite out of the movies of the franchise. But like after rewatching it and doing the research and kind of learning about everything that went into it and the different parts of history that are included, I found a new respect for it. It's still not my favorite, but it's no longer, I no longer dislike it. Now, I don't know when I'm going to be able to put out Dial of Destiny. That still is in theaters. It definitely will. It hasn't went into theaters yet, actually. But by the time this episode comes out, it'll have already been in theaters, and it might even already be out streaming somewhere. So it'll get watched, it'll get researched, it'll get done. I don't know if it'll be the next episode or if it'll have to come later, but we'll do it. So make sure to like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys sitting here and taking your time out of your day to listen to what I have to say about this and showing your support. This is something that I've always really wanted to do. I've always wanted to like research like ancient history and like maybe even share that knowledge with other people and like have these kind of conversations, and there's finally a type of platform where I could do it. So please make sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment. If I got some information wrong, drop it in the comment section. If there's something that you think I should have touched on a little bit more, drop it in the comment section. If there's a movie that you think I should go over, drop it in the comment section. For those of you that are watching this on YouTube, for those of you listening on like Spotify or Apple Music or wherever it is that you're listening to, I will have a social media outlet set up for this. I haven't done it yet, but there will be other ways to communicate with me to voice your opinion on everything. But until that happens, I will see you guys on the next episode, and we'll see what happens. Peace. Thanks. Outro. Cats.